to Sunday. We will be roasting some sweet potatoes for Grandma. And I might bake some pear puree graham muffins. Or just a cake. Maybe just a cake. Muffin pans are too hard to wash. I'm rethinking this whole schema. Yeah, so I'm gonna rinse off some sweet potatoes, turn on this light for you, brush them a little bit, throw them into the oven, and then we'll prep the pear bran cake thing. Don't know how everyone else's week is going or went. I guess it depends on if you think Sunday is the first day of the week or the last day of the week. I grew up thinking it was the last day of the week, and then I realized a decade into looking at American calendars that the week technically, as it's formatted in most calendars, starts on Sunday. Do you think Sunday is the first or the last day of the week? Like, none of this makes sense. Have you ever realized this? That Sunday being the first day of the week is a part of the weekend? Weekend? And I've been thinking about the ways in which the world doesn't make sense. A lot of it. I've been thinking about the way in which we make choices that don't seem to make sense. I've been thinking about the way that we make choices that betray ourselves. And I've been thinking about the way in which we might have multiple selves who don't agree with each other, and how that can paralyze us or lead us down into paths of shame and confusion and anxiety and, you know, the stuff that is hard to resolve because it's just all inside. And you realize that there are multiple paths and choices that you can take, and you realize the faults across all of them, and it just sucks to know that sometimes no matter what choice you make, you're going to end up being discontent with it. And that's when I go, you selfish, greedy bastard, quit it. Quit it. You know that Mad TV skit? Stop it. My favorite Mad TV skit. Very philosophical, your answers regarding whether or not Sunday is the first or the last day of the week. Grandma's been having good and bad days. Most of the days are a mixture of the two. But this week has been comparatively better than last week. So maybe the new med that they put her on is working somewhat. She is still quite convinced that the facility is filled with thieves that steal her nail clippers and scissors and everything, clothes, photos, but if you saw my post on Instagram, we ended up finding the photos that she said were taken from her. She's been cutting little slits into her suit jackets in the lining of the suit jackets. She's been making pockets out of those slits. She's been slipping various things into her hat, which she's also slit open. Deconstructing everything to make space for things that she will carry with her when she returns to China, and a plane ride that will take less than an hour to reach Beijing from New York. I've been having trouble remembering what day of the month it is this week. So thank goodness for writing in her calendar as a part of our daily routine. Because otherwise I would not know that today is the 18th. Is that right? Is today the 18th? I don't know if I'm falling apart or if Grandma's finally infecting me with her reality. I have lost all energy to counter her reality. And maybe that is for the best. Maybe that is part of the reason why she is less reactive. I have submitted to her. I guess in all relationships, we must take turns submitting. And I hope for my own well-being that I will continue to submit to her reality as much as I can until she passes away, because to resist her is a death wish. I think that is something that my mom did or tried to do. And I see now that it is not a smart or utilitarian decision. But anyway, how's your week? Everybody's so quiet today. We can just listen to me scrubbing sweet potatoes, that's fine too. Whatever makes you happy, I'll do. Maybe I should put the yogurt that's left in my jar into these muffin cake whatevers we're about to bake. It's very interesting of grief lately. It's very exhausting to cry every day. But I suppose this too is part of the process. Dolly asks, where do you find peace on the hard days? I find peace in scrubbing sweet potatoes. heating up my leftovers. I find peace in watching a TV show that my friend Peter recommended me called Everything's Gonna Be Okay. It stars a autistic actor in an autistic role. It deals a lot with autism and relationships and family dynamics and grief and just growing up. It's kind of a really well-rounded sitcom of sorts. So many facets of life is explored in there. I'm not a huge fan of sitcoms, but they have really cool bugs in the show. Just as like a side character almost. And it's been really interesting to observe the autistic character and her friends who are also on the spectrum somewhere, I think. And just seeing their habits or their mindsets. And, you know, I don't identify with all of the traits that are being displayed, explored, but many of them I can see in myself. So it's been illuminating the ways in which, you know, it finally makes sense that I didn't think I was hurting people, but I was. It would be so much easier in life if everybody's brains worked the same way, but they don't. And it's kind of like finding out for the first time ever that cats are not just all cats, that they can have very different personalities. Like how Tuna was an absolute sweetheart and angel here, and she had never been here before. And Fred just could not stand it here. So I've been thinking the ways in which our difference can help us learn, but our difference can also push us apart. And it's all a matter of, to a certain degree, personal choice of who you want to align with, who you want to surround yourself with, and maybe to another degree of whether or not you believe in certain values, like what the self is and what makes life worth living, and whether or not people can change, should change, how they should change, if they should change. Yeah, the snow was pretty great. Grandma had a really fun time playing with the snow. Alright, on to pear. I made some more pear juice, you know, pear soup, and then these are the leftover cooked pears. And, oh, there's extra seepage we can harvest. Cheers. So delicious. Alright, I'm gonna immersion blend that up, and we're gonna figure out how to make this pear cake, I guess. how much pears we have. I was thinking chai spice bran cake would be cool with the pear flavors. I also have some applesauce that I can put in here and some yogurt, so we'll see what works. Another blind bake. Yum. Delicious. Okay, so we got pear sauce, we got applesauce, we got some yogurt. Sounds like it's gonna be a very wet cake. I have some egg whites that I could use up in this cake too, so that's fun. Yeah, it will feel like it's pulling itself to the bottom because it's basically suctioning, right? When it blends, it kind of just like sucks all the air, pulls all the air from the surrounding area and whirls it. That blade that whirls in the immersion blender will start pulling everything in to whirl it. So that's the suction that you're feeling. It's pretty natural. Just be gentle when you lift it up or else the liquid might splatter everywhere. See if this applesauce is still good. It feels like it's still good, so we're gonna pretend it's still good. Ta-da. I think you can start on a lower speed to start and then increase your speed if there's a speed setting you can toggle. Let me set the timer for an hour 10. All right, into this we are going to be adding some chai spice. Smells really good. 1.5 teaspoons. A little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Add in 1 egg white, 2 egg whites. I think that should be good. And let's just put it all in. Don't want this shit. I don't know how many egg whites that was. However many egg whites we sifted out on a previous live. recommendations for immersion blender, but mine is Braun. I got it refurbished from Amazon. Breville is a more expensive brand. I have heard okay things about it. I feel like you can get away with most immersion blenders as long as you're not heavy dutying them. Maybe like a third of a cup of yogurt. Do we want any other spices in here? Should we do a little bit of coffee sugar too? Maybe like a quarter cup of coffee sugar. Let me know if you have any other spice suggestions. So the Braun also requires you to hold the button down. I find that it's actually a nice feature because if your thumb is burning out, then the machine probably is too. So that's a good signal that you should probably take a pause and not keep forging onwards with the blending, because if the machine burns out, then you'll have to wait for a much longer time, maybe sometimes like 10-20 minutes for it to recover, and it's almost like a synchronicity with your hand if you have to hold it down, you know. Gauge your machine's well-being for the ultimate goal of smooth purees. What is coffee sugar and why have I not heard about it before? Coffee sugar is literally just coffee beans that I like blended with granulated sugar in my spice grinder. I can put it on top of buttered toast or on top of my oatmeal. I can put it in yogurt or on top of my cereal like Cheerios, or I can put it into cakes. It has sugar, it has coffee, so, you know, it's fun. What have you learned by opening yourself up to these lives? What's it like to be watched by so many peeps virtually? Has this experience changed how you see yourself? Absolutely. Constantly. Yeah, you can do it with Splenda, but I don't think it's gonna taste very good. Sorry, I just don't think Splenda tastes very good. But if that's all you can do, then that's all you can do. I'm not gonna tell you no. It's your first time watching a live. The interactive nature of it all is fascinating. You're telling me, buddy. You are telling me. A little bit of vanilla extract. Just a splash. Yes, being on these lives have changed me tremendously. In the beginning, it was really hard to watch myself on playback, but I think it was really actually useful for me to understand what my behaviors were like in other people's eyes. And sometimes it does get very cringe for me to watch myself back. It's not really pleasant to have yourself mirrored back in this very direct way sometimes because, you know, I guess technically we are all performing in life, so even when the camera's not on, we are performing for other people with certain courtesies and frameworks in mind. But as far as YouTube goes, I feel like my live stream presentation is pretty unfiltered, and obviously that illuminates a lot of things that I don't really love about myself. Just naturally brings it to the forefront. And so it's been very fascinating to see that and understand a little bit of what it might feel like to interact with me in real life. Putting in some whole wheat pastry flour. I think I'm also going to add in walnuts and maybe a little chocolate too. Gunshot piercings are not good. It creates blunt trauma most of the time. If you can opt for needle, I think the consensus is needle is always better because it has a more direct impact and goes right through the skin, whereas the gun is just not. There's a lot of surrounding pressure that's not at the needle point. Feel free to correct me in the chat. I have been known to give fake news before, so never trust me. Okay, we're gonna add in a little bit of chia seeds too for structure, especially since we have a lot of moisture going on in here. And I'm gonna add in a little bit of extra virgin olive oil as well. I'm not measuring anything, as you can see. I'm thinking about frosting this with some cream cheese icing later too, so I'm not too worried about the fattiness in here. But yeah, these walnuts we'll have to break up by hand. Let's add that last. Let's go in with some baking powder first. Maybe a teaspoon and 3/4. Maybe a little baking soda. Maybe a few oats in there for chewiness. Bob of Bob's Red Mill just passed away, did you know? Saw a lot of tributes from food people on Instagram. I've been using Bob's Red Mill's oats. They're really great. Highly recommend if you can afford the higher price point. They're chewier, they just have more texture. They taste cleaner than a lot of other oats that I've had, and it's a really nice company. I believe it's now fully, with the death of Bob, I believe now it's fully worker owned. So support it if you want to support it, enjoy it if you want and can enjoy it. Not sponsored. I just quite like it. I don't know about Bob's Red Mill's oat story. Is there an oat story? Like specifically an oat story? Do you want to tell us it? But yeah, seemingly a wonderful man who just truly cared and, you know, created a business in the world of late stage capitalism that doesn't fall into the trappings of late stage capitalism, and it's just really inspiring and life-giving to know that people out there still exist who want to do the right thing. and believe in a world where we don't have to make money by bombing people, that we can make money by feeding people and giving them jobs that they can have ownership in, and you know, almost like a socialist sort of sanctuary in the horrific desert of humanity. Oh yeah. The potato flakes make the best mashed potatoes. Wow. I have some, I think. I gifted it to Mom. I don't think she ended up using it. So, I opened this chocolate bar. Everyone at Burlap and Barrel got a post-holiday gift box with so many goodies in it, and there's a lot of bars of Tony's chocolate in it, and I opened it because I was craving chocolate, but the milk chocolate is very, very sweet, so I think we're gonna chop up the remaining bar here and throw it in there. I don't know how this is all gonna taste with cream cheese, honestly, but we'll see. You know, minus not having health insurance, my life is pretty plump. I'm pretty blessed. All I have to do is not ever get sick, you know? I think we can do that, right? Maybe? So that one was plain milk chocolate, and then there's milk chocolate, caramel sea salt, milk chocolate nougat. I gave away the dark chocolates, and then there's dark chocolate hazelnut. These sound really good. Let's not put too much in there. I don't want to overwhelm it. I'm trying to pace myself, you know. I feel like this is going to be a very sloshy cake. What else can we put in here? Ooh, buckwheat powder? No, that sounds not good. Cassava flour. Okay, interesting. Black sesame. Do we want black sesame in there? Could be fun. Maybe. Ooh, and I have these hazelnuts. Let's actually blend up these hazelnuts. Let's make more coffee sugar, and then we'll blend up the hazelnuts so that I don't have to clean out a spice blender just for hazelnuts. Because I have been loving the coffee sugar, so let's do more of it. Maybe this summer we can finally make ice cream with that ice cream maker that a viewer gave me. Alright, you just need coffee beans and you need sugar. At least that's all I need. These are beans that I got from Mexico when I went on the Burlap and Barrel sourcing trip. I think eating coffee is much easier and tastier than drinking it. Noise. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna blend it a few more times because the last time I made it, there were still some chunky bits of coffee. I'm just trying to see how fine we can get it. Where does depression come from is a fascinating question. I think it is different for everyone. Some depression I feel like is more biological, and some of what we experience as depression could be comorbid with other conditions that exist that we're not aware of. And some depression is just naturally a part of life where bad shit happens to you and you feel shitty and it is so painful and helpless feeling that it can paralyze you and make you feel like you can't get out of it. So I feel like there's definitely at least 3 categories of depression for me anyway. Smells pretty great. I might have put too much coffee in here, but whatever. We'll live. You know, actually, now that I'm doing this, I realized that I probably should have ground some lavender in here. I want to grind some lavender in here as well. So let's do that next. We'll have some lavender-esque coffee sugar remnant. Our coffee sugar. More coffee than sugar this time. We'll label that. Here's lavender that I bought in 2018. 5-year-old lavender. Hello, Kazakhstan and Greece. Here's lavender ground up. Alfronzo, is that the kind of die cut pasta that comes out of really, really high quality fancy machines? Sounds like it. All right. Great, we got ground lavender now too. And now we're gonna grind our hazelnuts. Some of the pieces are still pretty chunks, but they are turning into butter now, so we're gonna pull. Abort. Yeah, if you see like a layer of like white frostiness on your pasta, that's usually a sign of a higher quality production, is what I've been told. Okay. We got walnuts, hazelnut, olive oil, yogurt, applesauce, pear, chocolate bits, oats, chia seed, seasonings, baking powder, baking soda, whole wheat flour, bran, apple and pear sauces. Let me give this a taste. Okay. Not sweet, like at all, really. It's not bland, but it's definitely not sweet. I say we wash these little Halo Cutie orange, mandarin, tangerine, whatever you want to call it. We zest it and we add some zest in there. Hello. I am making a cake. Vic Wapo. Do you live in Queens? Where at? I haven't made videos on all the places I like to go eat. Maybe I will soon. Again, we'll see. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Flushing. That was where my parents first settled when all three of us finally immigrated to New York City and reunited. Guys, what if I got with local viewers and just went on food tours and vlogged it? I don't think they would get a lot of views, but it would definitely be very fun. I think, anyway. Orange, chocolate, chai, coffee with a little remnant of lavender. What fascinating muffins. Do we have room for one more thing? Oh yeah, let's add in a little bit of this wood-fired maple sugar, which is now back in stock. That was my Truman Show ad spot moment. This canister is 20 bucks, so not cheap, but I will say if you like to treat yourself with a little extra flavoring with your sweetener on top of oatmeal or whatever, they're really great on Brussels sprouts too, if you like that kind of maple brown sugar Brussels sprout flavoring. Each canister is about 8.5 ounces, and each canister contains over 3 gallons of raw sap cooked down and crystallized into sugar. So it's quite an intensive practice, and it's one couple in Vermont who make it every year for Burlap and Barrel, in case you're interested. Ooh, that coffee flavor, y'all. That's good. That's really good. I'm gonna add in a little bit of honey as well. Just like a tablespoon of it. This is actually really special black honey that on the DL, Burlap and Barrel might be bringing in the next year from, ooh, where is it from actually? I don't remember. It might be from Zanzibar, but I'm not sure anymore. But yeah, super fascinating taste. Samira and I taste tested it. It's very, very strong. There's another one that's smoked honey. This one almost has like a charred wood flavor to it. A little bit tart, spicy towards the back of your throat. So pretty excited to see that join the lineup if ever. And then I'm gonna go in with a little bit of cinnamon, extra cinnamon for sweetness. my butter wrappers. Queens Night Market is canceled for me. We're gonna add some flaxseed to the bottom of the cake. Queens Night Market is canceled because they basically shut a Palestinian vendor up when they put up a banner maybe in October or November, probably October, basically saying, hey y'all, your tax money is funding this assault on Gaza. And they made them take it down because they said the Queens Night Market is not a political place. But hey, when businesses put up banners supporting Ukraine, they didn't get taken down. So, you know. Selective reasoning. And I really never quite had fun there. Too crowded for me. Me and my lack of desire for social events. I'm angry, y'all. I'm feeling angry today. A little, I think, fed up with everything. How y'all doing? Is anybody else angry or just me? I think this cake is going to be too loose. Oh well. I'm going to turn that down to 350. Okay. And we're going to eat these tiny mandarins. Are they mandarins? I guess now we just wait for half an hour for the bake. What should we talk about? Or do you want to just be here in silence? Or do you want to meditate? What do you want to do? Tell me. Tell me your democratic desires. Ooh, somebody's playing the piano. That's fun. Sounds more like a keyboard, but I'll count it. Alright, nobody's speaking up, so I'm gonna go grab a book and we're gonna read. Until you tell me what you want, if you don't want to hear a story. You can complain about your apartment being broken. Why is your apartment broken? That sounds hella weird. Alright, let's first label my sugar and lavender. You ordered La Gama instead of making it yourself? Reasonable. How do you clean the film that Visionware pots get? I use baking soda. That usually helps. When you were on the Cosmo cheap versus expensive segment, did you get to take home the cheese, apple, and other things you tasted? Yes, if I wanted them. I only wanted the cheese, so that's the only thing that I took. Neither of the apples were that good. TBH. Or at least I didn't really... I might have actually taken the apple that I thought was better. I'm not sure anymore. It's been a while. It's been a lifetime and a half. Okay. Coffee, sugar, lavender. So, an editor from Soft Skull Press reached out to me maybe over 2 years ago now. I'm not sure anymore. And we met up again maybe last month or the month before. Maybe last month. It was January. And yeah, she ended up gifting me this advanced reading copy of a book that is on sale August of this year, called Opacities on Writing and the Writing Life by Sofia Samatar. And I've been enjoying reading it. It's kind of written like a collection of anecdotes. They're all kind of somewhat philosophical, tying into theory and reflections on what it means to write literature and the problems of forming a narrative and generalized reflections that are very specific in the way that they detail experiences, conversations, thoughts. So it's at once really intimate, and it doesn't really give you the context for a lot of things, but it's so well presented and formulated that you don't really need to know the entire context. You get this like embrace of feeling that clues you into what the emotional state of this particular moment, of this particular passage is. And yeah, so it's like kind of opaque, but it's kind of transparent. So it walks this very interesting, fluidly ambivalence of discovery, rumination, reflection, resolution, resignation. And it's like, I feel like it gets to the point of intellectualness where you're like, oh, this person sounds very well read and intelligent and smart, but it doesn't leave you out of it. It kind of like holds your hand through it. So this is a random page. Let me read. Ah, yes. Okay, so this is a passage that I posted in one of my most recent Instagram posts. I'll read the whole thing. This is on page 106 and 107. I remembered Samuel R. Delany, who said that he was always being asked to speak with Octavia E. Butler, another Black science fiction writer, rather than writers of his own subgenre, cyberpunk, who were not Black. It put a little pang in the center of my chest. Not that he had anything against Octavia Butler, though they were such different writers. No, of course he was happy to speak with her. I thought of Ama Ata Aidu on the plane, and the flight attendant's question. You want to join your two friends at the back, yes? Aidu saw at once that it would be awkward to refuse. So yes, she would join her friends at the back of the plane. She would leave her seat with the white passengers for these friends she'd never met. These strangers, two extremely handsome Nigerian men. Of course, she'd be delighted to sit with them. It was only that she felt a pang, but after all that was something that passed quite quickly. In the end, one is grateful for almost all connections, even the ones that are byproducts of a death-producing structure. Things are working out, she wrote, towards their dazzling conclusions. The flight was arranged so that they passed the last of Africa in the dead hours of the night. It was nearly dawn when they crossed the Mediterranean. And there was this other continent, lighted up with the first streaks of glorious summer sunshine. Stuart Hall called himself a political humanist and an intellectual anti-humanist. I thought this was perfect until I had to talk about writing in public. Then my humanism and anti-humanism became hopelessly confused, and I found myself ascribing motives to what I had written in a kind of trance. How does one present a coherent self? In a way, it was the problem of finding a place on a shelf in a bookstore. That is to say, the problem of being sold. It was the problem of needing to be read. That is to say, legible, visible, seen, discovered, purchased, and consumed. And yet, I wrote to you. It's not just that one hates being advertised. It's something deeper, I think, something that really has to do with writing. I quoted Blanchot, who wrote of that neutral power, formless, without a destiny, which lies behind everything that is written. This power makes the writer a person without a future or a past, someone who no longer is capable of belonging to time. A writer who is writing lives in visceral time. And so to be fixed in some frozen image of historical time makes one false to writing. Experiments have proved, wrote Walter Benjamin, that a man does not recognize his own walk on the screen or his own voice on the phonograph. When she was 23 years old, Miko Kanai wrote a story, but when she read it in a magazine, it seemed inconceivable to her that she had written it. And it seemed still more inconceivable to her in the instant that she was writing it. She thought, some other person is writing this. Reading her words, I traced a stain of light. All books are posthumous, I realized. All writing is ghostwriting. And this is a very fascinating passage to read too, because when I first met up with this editor who gave me this book, I was talking to her about how I didn't want to write a book because I really did not know which part of myself I would cut off, sever, analyze, package, and sell. The point of writing a book is to get it in people's hands. The point of publishers is to sell the books so they can get money. And so in writing a book, there's always this objective of distribution and consumption, and also profit making, because capitalism. And as you know, I don't feel very strongly about supporting capitalism and feeding into the machine. So I've always been just quite content with writing my short Instagram captions. But inevitably I find that on most of these captions that are more literary or memoir-ish, that there's always a few comments asking me to write a book. And it always makes me wonder and curious, what is it about a physical book that makes people desire it? Why is it not sufficient for me to just publish piecemeal on the internet this text, these thoughts, these feelings and conclusions and stories for free? I'm having trouble making sense of a lot of things in life right now. Why we want the things we want. What makes us want the things we want? Is it because we see ourselves in these things that we want to want them? That we want to want ourselves? That we want to be able to hold ourselves in our own hands and read ourselves with our own eyes and see ourselves played back to us? Is the main motivation of life a sort of survival narcissism? And I'm not placing, this condemnation or like negative judgment on narcissism, but in the last 2 years I've been wondering how different our world would be if we had no mirrors. How would we conceptualize ourselves and our realities if we had no source of reflection? If we could never see ourselves visually? Would we rely on others people's opinions of us more or less? Would we internalize self-critique more or less without mirrors? How do we check other people's perception of us against our own realities if we cannot see our own realities? If we can only live our own realities and have it pass by? Without mirrors, we would not have cameras. We would not have photos or videos. Everything would just pass when they pass. They would happen, and then other things would happen, and we would move along with it. We would happen. We would not be stuck in the past. Or maybe we would still, but to a lesser degree. To have visual memories is to give ourselves an outlet for living through memory, living through the past, literal lenses of interpretation based on outdated happenings and interpretations. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I feel like it would be very different to live in a reality without mirrors. Okay. Well, chat is kind of dead today. Cake is baking. I guess I'll sit here and I'll read. I don't know if anybody wants to hear me read, but I'm gonna read. Dear writers, however, those who are no longer writing. Oh, I misread this. Restart, page 110. Dead writers, however, those who are no longer writing, they can be historical. They are at home in the past. Maybe to be fixed in time as a living writer is in some way to be killed, to suffer a kind of death. And why record these notes, which, by the time they are written, will have been written by someone who no longer exists? What I was writing, I thought, was simply what I wanted to keep, so as not to forget, so that when I opened my book, I could return. Slept, awoke, wrote Kafka. Miserable life. The thought of such an existence frightened me, and at the same time there was something vivid about its arid atmosphere, its multiplicity and spareness. To write. When I think about it, I must say that my education has done me great harm in some respects. Often I think it over, and then I always have to say that my education has done me great harm in some ways. Often I think it over and give my thoughts free rein without interfering, and always, no matter how I turn or twist it, I come to the conclusion that in some respects, my education has done me terrible harm. Often I think it over and give my thoughts free rein without interfering, but I always come to the conclusion that my education has spoiled me more than I can understand. I often think it over and give my thoughts free rein without interfering, but I always come to the same conclusion. That my education has spoiled me more than all the people I know, and more than I can conceive. I almost quoted his diary to you, but in the end did not. When I look back like this, I don't know at all whether there have been any nights. Everything looks to me, can you imagine, like one day without any mornings, afternoons, and evenings, even without any differences in light. Imagine, I wrote, a series of blocks illuminated like windows. You were writing what you described as little doors. We were both drawn to the idea of the sequence, the line of works, like a procession of images cast onto a screen. Rilke in Vienna, lecturing on Rodin by the light of a magic lantern. It was, of course, a way of remaining incomplete. The series of small books suggests collage, I wrote to you. It's always unfinished. The poet as lamplighter, kindling flames down an endless street. Fantasy writers understand the secret process embedded here, which is why the genre is almost defined by the series, the sequel, the cycle. The spaces between the street lamps make the world. The world doesn't dwell in the poet's light, but in the obscure distances made palpable at its edge. The first volume of a fantasy establishes nothing. Only when the second volume is published does the make-believe world become real. As the reader realizes it's continued, an immeasurable history has been going on in the darkness, over there. Rilke, on stage, describing Rodin's sculptures. The stones preserve, even in the midst of the day, that mysterious shimmer which white things exhale in the twilight. This radiance is not the result of the vibrant quality of the points of contact alone, but is due in part to the flat ribands. I've never seen that word before. Ribbands of stone that lie between the figures like small bridges which connect one form with the other. Only with fragments can you make a universe. This is what we call world building. And how I always wanted to stand on the small bridge, on one of those ribands of stone that links the forms, to gather the light like a vase that gently and continuously overflows. Among the forms of repetition, there must be one that forces a person to appear again and again in the same garb, and this makes a deadly feeling. And there must be another form of repetition in which a child imitates a rabbit, and this makes a lively feeling. There must also be a form of repetition in which the artist Hokusai draws over 200 lions. This is ecstatic. I know that I have mentioned this already, Clarice Lispector wrote, but I am repeating it out of my zest for happiness. I want the same thing over and over again. Susan Rubin Suleiman wrote that Hélène Cixous worked on the same subjects over and over until they became decanted. I loved this idea of writing as a distillation, a chemical process. Cixous wrote that she wanted to be a painter. She wanted, like Monet, to paint the cathedral 26 times to make a sheaf of paintings, a herd, a flock, a tribe. She wanted to paint she wanted to paint the cathedral until she saw it in all its lights. My sleep was filled with nightmares, she wrote, quoting Monet. The cathedral fell down on top of me. It appeared either blue, pink, or yellow. She quoted Hokusai, I continue to draw, hoping for a peaceful day. She quoted Jean Genet, who wrote of Rembrandt that he began by gilding, by covering surfaces with gold, and then he burned the gold, consumed it, in order to attain the gold ash with which he painted his last paintings. Another process from the chemist's lab, a burning away. Art is not purity, Lispector wrote. It is purification. I wrote to you that this reminded me of religious language, that Isaac Watts' hymn about purifying the heart until it became perfume. And it was also, I wrote, the Sufi ideal of polishing the heart until its brightness reflected only the divine. So for me, this becomes a question of writing, I wrote. How do you purify? How do you polish? The repetitive motion of polishing. How to annihilate the self. How to Reach the Sufi Fana, the Void. Monet in his fury burning 30 canvases. It is only at the end of a superhuman human going to the depths of the phantoming of life and back that one will be able to cease gilding everything, wrote Caesar. And then one can begin to adore. That's a very fun passage. My friend Daisuke, who, if you watched the previous live, is autistic and has been kind of guiding me and coaching me and advising me on maybe navigating the world with a autistic brain of sorts, was just, he just posted, his latest Instagram post was about how we try so hard to define the self in words and to understand ourselves, but ultimately, after so many rounds of self-definition, you just let go and you just be. You just let yourself be. That's when the self is most free. It also reminds me of the idea that Heidegger had regarding meaning or reality or truth. Definitions by default kill truth. That when you begin to encapsulate and attempt to capture reality and truth in words, that it becomes at that moment entirely inaccurate because language cannot capture truth and reality in that way fully. And I think about the fact that I am so prone to making meaning out of words, storytelling, remembering, ruminations, recycling all these thoughts and ideas and philosophies and emotions until they make sense to me. This neuroses of trying to make sense of things, how tiring and exhausting it can be. And yet without it, I can't seem to function. Things have to make sense in my brain for me to proceed. Because if they don't make sense, then I guess there is no me. In a way, I am just operating like I did in several of my nightmarish dreams, where I just rolled onwards in this endless train as if moving by way of the momentum of a shopping cart being pushed in an empty parking lot. And I had no control over the speed or the direction. There was only one direction, and it was forward. And there was only one speed, and it was intolerably average. And it was made intolerably painful because in each and every one of the endless train cars I would pass through, a hand would emerge from behind one of the train seats and slice through me because I had no control to avoid my body from passing through that knife in the aisle. And so I guess in a lot of ways, to live life without understanding is a sort of almost unbearable pain. And to be able to form meaning and understanding for ourselves is a sort of painkiller, a soother, a comfort blanket. But it ultimately also distances me from living this reality. Because as soon as I put reality into words, I contain it and I restrict it. And I try my best to tame it, but all I really do is maim it. I imprison it and I enforce upon it my interpretation, my rules, and I try to make it make sense. And I'm not sure it does. I'm not sure if it's possible at all. So what do we do then? I guess we take turns. doing different things. When I was in China, they told us that we had to rotate our poisons because the food safety laws were so lax and you never know what your food might be tainted with. There was that whole baby formula contamination drama with melamine found inside over a decade ago maybe. And so when I was in China, everybody was like, you can't just eat one thing. You have to like rotate your poisons, you know? Just assume that everything is poisonous, and you're just kind of putting all your eggs in all the baskets so that you're not contaminating yourself with a singular poison at extremely high doses. So taking turns then to tell the story and to live the life, a sort of eating and digesting, a sort of shitting and harvesting, sowing and stewarding, cooking and making, and trying somehow to learn in all of these stages something, anything. Hoping that it's an ingredient that will become useful at some point in the future in this pantry of life. But also being careful to not hoard too much. To not self-identify with one flavor and one cuisine. To try to play with it a little bit, maybe. And let go of the fears of failing or not understanding, and how to try without knowing what exactly it is that you're doing, and to be open to the process of experimenting and observing. And then at the end of the day, you'll have something made, and you may like it, you may not like it, you may choose to eat it, or you may choose to discard it. And when you get hungry enough again, you will begin again. What do copyists dream of? Asked Abdel Fattah Khalidou. Of rest, it seems. This reminded me of the cartoon on the wall of the copy room at work, which showed a pair of monks, one of them collapsed on top of his papers, the other announcing, "Printers down!" Khalidou recounted the story of Ibn al-Hadina, who dreamed that he died and went to paradise, where there was no more writing. I lay on my back, crossed my legs, and told myself that I was through with copying. But I woke up and found my pen in my hand and the copy sheets before me. What was the goal of this endless quest? I sent you some lines from Blanchot. Is Cézanne's concern to express himself, to give to art that is one more artist? He swore to die painting. Was that just in order to live on? Does he sacrifice himself in this passion which knows no happiness, simply so that his paintings might give form to the singular weather of his soul? Blanchot knew better than that. This went far beyond self-expression. There is a tender empiricism that makes itself inwardly identical with the object. He felt this with a certainty that did not cease to hurt. This much no one can doubt. What he seeks has only one name: painting. for the cake. As for the sweet potato, we might be done. Let's see. Oh, we got a diagnosis. Pitter Patter says, I've been watching you a long time. I am retired from medical field. I believe your primary diagnosis is major depressive disorder. Thank you. Perfect. Could be worse, huh? I could be autistic and depressed. Who else? Who else knows what is in this mix? I do have to eat in 3 hours, but I am kind of hungry. Shall we eat the other orange? Tangerine? Thingy majiggy? And then maybe some leftovers? Or an apple? Maybe we can make an apple dessert later in the week. Came here for the cooking and got served food for thought. Yay. I'm a jack of all trades. Ooh, what else is in your feta muffins? Do tell, do tell. My favorite thing when making sweet potatoes is this syrup that leaks. Let's see if we can rescue some of it and eat it. Let's see what it tastes like. It's really hot. We'll let it cool down a little bit. You can see it runs like honey. Whoops, keeps dripping like honey too. Wow, that's so good. It's like sweet potato flavored honey. Kalamata olives, tuto porchetta seasoning from burlap and barrel, smoked garlic and pine nuts. Hell yeah! That sounds so good. Thank you for sharing your muffin ingredients. I don't know if you guys watch my, I don't actually even remember which video it was. Maybe it was the disordered eating one, but The Nameless Narcissist is a YouTube channel that I used to watch for a while last year, and he basically said that, you know, like, disorders are disorders because it's not like everybody needs to be diagnosed. It's just that diagnoses can help when you feel like you can't really live life smoothly and it's causing trouble for you. So I don't really need a diagnosis for autism or for major depressive disorder or for whatever the fuck else I have going on inside my brain and chemicals and gut, flora, fauna, whatever, but it's all a matter of like, how do I make living easier for myself? How do I make it less miserable for myself? And if knowing about these conditions give me coping mechanisms or ways to work around my own head and enables me to loosen my judgment and grip and guilt and shame on myself, then that's my goal, right? Because once you have chosen to embrace life, I think you also choose in that same decision to live life as happily as you can within your situation. I think a lot of people, myself included, tend to live with a lot of self-blame. A lot of it is unnecessary, but it is learned as a second nature almost. And so sometimes learning about these conditions is my way of educating myself so that I can unlearn some of the habits that have been instilled in me that make me miserable. My goal is always how to make myself a little bit less miserable. And I'm not saying misery is always unwanted. There is such a thing as masochism. And masochism is such a twisted, perverse concept where you derive pleasure from pain. Again, nothing really makes sense, so I give myself into these contradictions because oftentimes it's within these conflicts that you find the most meaning. But masochism from time to time is different from masochism as a lifestyle consistently. And I think for a very long time in my life, I was living in a masochistic state rather than indulging in masochistic flavors and seasonings. And so now I am trying to understand my patterns, my behaviors, my mental frameworks, so that I can actually step back and say, okay, maybe I'm sinking back into masochism as a lifestyle, and maybe that's not what I want, and maybe that's really not good for me in the long run. So how do I turn it back into a flavoring and a seasoning and an ingredient rather than the whole canvas? So you can diagnose me all you want, and when you do, I will be sure to go research it and compare some traits with myself. And whether or not I have that condition is totally almost irrelevant, because as long as I can learn something, then I've learned something. So many professionals can have different opinions too about what you have and don't have. So I think it's in those moments that it becomes very obvious just how unreliable so-called objective reality might be. I think learning to trust others has been interesting for me, but learning to trust others is simply a step. It's not the end goal. Because everyone is probably as untrustworthy as you are, even when they don't intend on being untrustworthy. It's just the default of experiencing reality. I agree with Austin, who says, I think sometimes when life makes you miserable, just feeling miserable without judgment is healthier than trying to be positive and avoiding the feelings. Yes, that is my default method. Kelly says, I thought I was autistic for a while, but landed on a fun mix of OCD, ADHD, and panic disorder. Lucky you, girlfriend. Lucky you. Yeah, it's possible. Anything's possible. And if getting that sort of diagnosis helped you navigate your world and your experience of reality, great. that's the best we can hope for, I think. Here I am just eating sweet potato syrup candy on a tray. Life just happens, y'all. I think we tend to blame ourselves a lot. Looking back and questioning, what if I had done this differently? Could it have been a better outcome? It could have been. Could have also been a bad outcome, too. We just don't know. And there's no harm in thinking that way. But I think when you hold on to the blame for too long, it will cause you to become paralyzed. And I experienced it for a very long time after Mom died. And I think maybe I just started pulling out of it last year. Short of 2 years anniversary. All right, let's check up on our cake. Nice. Corners are starting to peel away. I see a corner with chocolate. We must go for it. Now, the best thing to do with worm cake is to let it rest. This is not going to be a clean cut piece because we're too impatient, but my phone battery is running out and I do want to taste this before we go. She gooey. She is a gooey one. Ooh, interesting. Interesting. It tastes like, oh, I can taste that black pepper. Ooh, she's spicy. It almost tastes like a very low sugar granola muesli, because it's like moist and kind of puddingy, but it also still has a lot of that muesli structure with the oats and the chia and the chocolate and the nuts and the spices. Hi, Australia. I think the chai spice definitely made it a little bit savory. It almost reads like bordering curry-like flavors without the turmeric, obviously, or the cumin or the coriander, but the chocolate adding a really nice sweet balance, the nuts adding a little texture difference, and a pop of walnut flavors. Let's put a little bit of sunflower seed butter on this. I've been loving sunflower seed butter. Almost done with my jar. I think once cooled, this will taste pretty good with cream cheese. What doesn't taste good with cream cheese, you know? The sunflower seed butter is like a little bit sugary, a little bit salty. Ties together the chai spice very well. I'll probably have myself another piece. Thank you for joining. I hope you have a great week ahead. Take it easy. Because no one else will take it easy on you if you don't. Vitamins, sleep, hydration, sleep, sleep. Get more sleep.